Well, welcome back to the closet kitchen. As you can see, I've dusted off the old slow cooker and I've made my Saylem slow cooker lasagna. It's a fantastic recipe that I've made a number of times and I've really fine-tuned it. I've made it really simple, really helpful tips all throughout the video on how to make this a disaster-proof experience for you. The beautiful thing about this recipe is that it makes enough of this delightful, full-bodied meat sauce so you can have something left over. You can freeze this, and if you don't want to come home after work and cook, you can take this out the morning of, or when you get home and de-thaw it on a pot on the stove, whatever. Wherever you're coming home from, just throw this together with your favorite type of pasta, just boil that up, toss it all together, and have a really hearty home-cooked meal. I hope that you share this recipe. You can find me on all recipes. You can find me by name, Saylem Rayne. Enjoy the video. We're going to start by pureeing these 2 cans of whole tomatoes. In this concoction, I also have 2 tablespoons of honey, as well as a couple dashes of my favorite hot sauce. That's completely optional. I love adding a little bit of heat and a little bit of sweet to a lot of the cooking that I do. I like the back notes of flavor. Again, totally optional. You don't have to add either. It's a good idea to taste the tomatoes, the canned tomatoes, and see if they're actually sweet. Sometimes they can be a little bit tart or sour, so you might have to sweeten it up a little bit. It takes away a little bit of the acidity. It does help with that. If you don't have one of these things, these are great for soup, for instance. I use it all the time. You can just mash it up yourself. I prefer to use the canned tomatoes. Super cheap, first of all. It's great to have it in the pantry on hand. You can grab them. I use them a lot for not only my Italian cooking, but soups as well as my Indian cooking. It just makes a better sauce, I find. It's better than the canned tomato sauces. So this is going to be a thicker sauce once it's cooked up a little bit. So let's get going. We're just going to puree this a little bit. I really like using large pans like this because I'm able to put a lot of ingredients in here, make quite a substantial amount of food. It won't splatter everywhere, and I have enough room to mix everything up. My oil is hot over here. It's starting to spit a little bit, so I'm going to get out of harm's way. We're going to start off by frying up this pound of ground beef. Of course, you can use a meat substitute if you like. I don't eat meat all the time myself, so that's a great option for you. I like to use ground beef. It just adds a nice amount of flavor. Chicken and turkey, you can, of course, use that as well. It's just going to be a bit drier, and it lacks a little bit of flavor. So I'm using the ground beef. You can use whatever type of meat or meat substitute you like. So we're going to cook this. I have the stove on in between maximum and medium heat, so right in the middle there. So this will cook for 6 to 8 minutes. And I'm ready to throw in my vegetable mix. So in this bowl, I have a red bell pepper, carrots, onion, and celery. I like this little medley because it's colorful. It adds a nice amount of crunch, different textures, different sweetness levels. It's pretty basic, so a lot of people will have this in their fridge already. I also recommend using what you have in your own fridge. And this is my spice blend. And in this spice blend I have, let's see if I can remember everything, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, sage, basil, rosemary, thyme, and oregano. So I'm going to throw this into here as well. And we're really just cooking this down until the onions become translucent, or otherwise known as see-through like, and shiny. Maybe a little bit brown too. We're getting some coloring here. Yes, we're cooking this in the slow cooker, and you could very well throw all of this stuff raw in the slow cooker. I don't really recommend that though. You always really want to brown your meats and cook your vegetables just a tiny bit, just to saute it at the very least, just for a few minutes, because you want to develop that flavor. The slow cooker will do a great job of slowly cooking and developing that flavor, but it does need a little bit of help as it doesn't actually brown things. And that's where the flavor comes from, browning things. It's been about 8 minutes. The vegetables are looking about done. So now it's time to add our 2 cans of pureed tomatoes with the honey and a little bit of hot sauce. I have turned the heat up just a tiny bit more, so it's just ever so slightly closer to the maximum setting. All I want to do here is bring this up to more of a rumbling sort of a boil while I'm stirring it, and then it'll be done. It'll be ready for assembly. It's come up to a bit of a boil, and enough has cooked out to make it just a little bit of a thicker sauce. And it's ready to go into the slow cooker. On to the next step. This is my cheese bowl. This is going to become the cheese layer for our slow cooker lasagna. In this bowl of cheese, I have mozzarella, I have Parmesan cheese, I have cottage cheese, and an egg. And all I'm gonna do is just mix all this stuff up really well. I've got myself all set up here. I've got my ducks in a row. I have the cheese mixture over here. I've got the tasty sauce mixture. I've got the whole grain lasagna noodles. They are not the oven ready type. They are just the regular you boil it yourself type, but we don't have to boil it because the slow cooker is going to do that job for us. Speaking of the slow cooker, what I've done here is I've actually lined the slow cooker with parchment paper. Parchment paper is one of my favorite things. It's such a useful thing, and it's not plastic. All I did was I cut a large sheet of it and I just stuffed it in there, making sure there's enough to go up the sides, like so. And then I just gave it a little bit of trim with my scissors. Let's get ready to assemble this slow cooker lasagna. We're going to start by adding a ladleful of the meat sauce. I like to use a soup ladle for this. Makes it a little bit easier. A little bit more. Why not? And then what you do, you're going to break your lasagna noodles. And start laying them down. This doesn't have to be pretty. Doesn't have to be pretty at all. I just like to cover up some of these areas here. But you can do whatever you want with this, really. There we go. The parchment paper, of course, is going to prevent the noodles and the mixtures from burning to the sides of the pot. I've made this a number of times before, and it does happen, and it is quite upsetting because I don't really like spending an hour cleaning a pot. Then we're gonna add our cheese mixture. That looks pretty good. And then we're gonna ladle over more of the sauce, the meat sauce. A little bit more. Another layer of noodle. I like to go in the opposite direction than I did at the bottom with the noodles. And then another cheese layer. And then another meat sauce layer. Noodles. Another layer of noodles. Again, I'm going in a different direction here. I feel like it makes a stronger lasagna, structurally speaking. And then the last cheese layer. More sauce. Top top it with just a little bit more sauce. And I have a cup of mozzarella to put on top. Just like that, the lasagna is cooked. It's finished. I didn't show you at first how long I was putting it on for because all slow cookers are different. They're not created equal, absolutely not. You're going to have to get to know your slow cooker and how it cooks, really. My slow cooker has a 4-hour setting, 6-hour, 8-hour, and 10-hour. So it has a high temperature setting and a low temperature setting. So a high cook time and a low cook time. So really, you're going to have to gauge how long your slow cooker cooks for, whether you cook on a high setting or the low setting. What I did was that when I pressed go, I chose the high setting, 4 hours. So that's the fastest that it could cook. This doesn't need 4 hours though. This lasagna will not need the full cook time of any of these options. Mine on the high setting in this slow cooker cooked for 2.5 hours. And for the last 15 minutes, I just took the lid off and I just let the steam and everything come off. If you choose the low setting, for instance, your lasagna could cook for 4 hours. I would say no longer than 4.5 hours. I would probably take a look at it. Again, you'll have to gauge and get to know your slow cooker. Doesn't this look fantastic? I can't wait to get into this. I could tell that this was done because the noodles were tender. They were tender to the touch. They weren't soggy. There's no excess water or anything like that. It's not a soupy mess. It's a proper lasagna, which is why I really, really, really like this recipe. You can cut the lasagna right inside of this pot. That's perfectly fine. It does lift out pretty well. Like if you let this sit for 15-20 minutes in the slow cooker and cut it and lift it out with a spatula, maybe 2 spatulas. I've done that before too. The first piece, it lifts out kind of weird. It won't fall apart completely. It just won't be a perfect cut, but the second one will be. Saylem slow cooker lasagna. I already ate the first piece. I took it out and it it just didn't look camera ready, so I ate it, and I'll eat this one too. I hope you give this a try. Learn how to use that slow cooker for lasagna. Thank you for watching. See you again soon.